the show live, weren't you?
I watched it live, yeah, and
Yeah.
I watched sat up and watched the media scrum live as well.
So
Despite the fact that my eyes were hanging out of my head by that stage.
So I totally forgot about the show, right? Because I was just like, yeah, I'll watch it whenever, right? So, but I came back. I think I was at a gig or something. I don't really remember what I did on Sunday night, which means it was a good weekend. I came back and I was like, oh yeah, that thing's on. I'll watch it whenever. Then my phone exploded because it just Twitter went mad. I'm like, what's going on? And I tune into it and I'm like, this is the strangest thing I've ever seen. And for anyone who didn't see it, CM Punk, like the stream I was watching, it wasn't the official stream. There were like 2 or 3 different streams of it, right? So I was watching a stream where he was talking, and he was talking to one of the reporters there, and he just started going off on him about Colt Cabana. If anyone doesn't know,
I watched this back a couple of times. Nobody raised.
No.
I thought I must have missed it that he was asked a question.
No, he just started talking. He just mentioned to him, yeah.
Well, I was kind of understand it at first because I was thinking, oh, he's just won the title and big night in his hometown, and he's come back to do a media scrum, and the first question is this Colt Cabana stuff again. But no, he just brought it up.
What happened was he sat down and he was like, I can't remember the guy's name, Nick something. He was like, hey, are you friends with Scott Coulson? Scott Coulson is the real name of Colt Cabana. And then it descended from there, and that's how it opened. Now, here's the thing. These media scrums, I find them quite distasteful because it's literally just a love fest for Tony Khan, which, I mean, sometimes justified, sometimes not, right? And there can be some good stuff in it. So I don't really watch them because I think it's kind of self-indulgent, right? But I never, in a million years, I never thought this would happen, right? So Punk comes out and he buries everybody.
But I think we need to heighten what Martin said there, because I think that's really important. It's
Go on.
Nobody asked him about Scotty or Colt Cabana, or it never came up.
No,
he decided to bring it up and then go on this whole rant about the whole thing. Now, it is the world of professional wrestling, and as Punk alluded to, they're not really journalists. They're all kind of have ins with certain wrestlers. So it seemed like he took the question he was asked, and I really want to quote verbatim, but I can't remember what it was right now, but it didn't mention anything like that. And so Punk was immediately like, oh, like, there's like, oh, you're friends with him? Like, you should disclose that when you ask a question. Like, I don't want to deal with that here. But again,
no one asked the question.
All these assumptions. Yeah.
No one asked the question. He just started.
Like, no, I'm not friends with him, but I guess you have to put yourself in the professional wrestling mindset of he sees these same people at every show. You know, I think Meltzer was there and he would address him by name.
Meltzer was, like, and also and Brian Alvarez as well, and he also got really upset with Brian Alvarez. Which again, folks, anything we're talking about, it might sound crazy, but it's not. You can actually find them talking about it. Like, I watched The Observer, I think you guys do as well, and a lot of this show this week has been them talking about what happened at the scrum and giving context to what's going on. So we have What Culture up on the screen. They also have done a pretty good job talking about it. The same with stuff from, a lot of stuff broke from Fightful as well. So look, for anyone who didn't see it, again, as the lad said, Punk came out, went on this rant about Colt Cabana. He believes someone leaked information that was his fault that Colt Cabana was moved from AEW to Ring of Honor, right? And then it descended from there. He believes that the books leaked the information. He went off on the books, Kenny Omega, because they're the VPs of the company. And then he went off on Hangman Adam Page as well. And the weird part was Tony Khan sat there the whole time with a face on him that can only be described as a deer in headlights, right?
Yes.
You're just sitting there going, again, this is what I was like, is this a work? Because there's no way he should be letting him say this, because it's like, one, he's swearing up a storm as well, like stuff we can't even repeat on the radio because, excuse me, we'll be kicked off, right? He goes full bore, effing and blinding out of him like you wouldn't believe. And then you're like, okay, that was weird. He leaves. Sorry, the best part of this whole thing is that he's eating muffins the entire time. Wonderful. That's my favorite part. He's just sitting there eating a big bag of muffins. Like, this is so crazy. Sorry, go on.
So at this stage, like, this is obviously all incendiary stuff, but at this stage he gets up, he walks off, and I'm fully convinced that this is a work. I'm like, oh, they must have gotten him and Cabana together. Right. Like, they've worked it out, and now they're going to do some sort of program together. It's like, oh, that'll be cool. That'll, have a load of heat to it.
I was thinking that.
He's setting up feuds for the next 6 months. Like I say, Hangman, the Buck. He's gonna. To me, it looked like he was setting up like a megalomaniacal heel champion character.
So a lot of copium here.
Well, no, but this is all before we heard what happened next.
Yeah. So
at this stage, I think this is brilliant. I'm like, oh my god, that was class.
And at this point, I'm like, oh my god, he's just like burned the company down, right? So I mean, my default setting from going through TNA and going through WCW, I'm like, this is serious. This is serious, right? But I love your innocence, Martin. It's very funny. It really is. But yeah, look, even if that had happened, I think they could have still done business, right? I think they still could have been like, hey, and that probably would have happened, right? What happens next throws that out the window. So swear to God, folks, this is not made up, right? This comes from any sources you want to pull from. What Culture, Fightful, The Wrestling Observer, Forbes. It goes on and on.
Despite Dara saying that, let me preface heavily. Everything else we're about to say is completely allegedly. And definitely a joke.
Absolutely.
Nothing we're about to say is serious or at all is real. Are we good? We're good. Okay.
Okay. Well, yeah. There's a lot of alleged what's going on here.
He's saying allegedly every 5 seconds. So it's all a joke. Let's just say that.
That's all a joke. Well, all I'm saying is, there are copious sources on this, and there are 3 sides to it. There's CM Punk's side, there's the book side, and then there's the truth, right? At the moment, there's an independent investigation going, a literal, real, independent investigation on this.
A special master, you might even say.
A special master, yes. Exactly. So, yeah, at the moment now, the police have been involved. There's lawsuits and everything pending, right? So that's all we can say. So everything here is alleged, blah, 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 right? But we're going to give you what has been reported, okay? So after this happened, Punk said, if anyone has a problem with what I said, come and find me. Again, I can't believe Tony Khan wasn't like... No, sorry, the best part of the whole thing was Tony Khan kept trying to calm him down. He goes, no, Tony, don't say anything. It's not your fault. And he goes back on these rants, and you're like, oh, well, okay. So the Bucks went and had a problem with it, because obviously, right? And apparently, allegedly, reportedly, they kicked in Punk's door. I really hope they slapped the leg when they kicked the door in. I really do.
They left that out of the report that they super kicked the door.
They super kicked the door. It's super kick party, and right. So I really hope they did that. And allegedly, of course. And then allegedly, Ace Steel, who's Punk's trainer, was involved as well. And there was, quote, a melee where Kenny Omega was bitten, allegedly, and had his hair pulled, allegedly. And then allegedly, there was a chair thrown by Ace Steel to allegedly Matt Jackson. And then allegedly, Punk swung. Allegedly.
Do you have a tick? What's happening here? Do you have a tick?
So we don't know, because this has been verified. There are 2 different sides of this, right? So, I mean, guys, weigh in on this. Again, for legal, we don't really know exactly what happened. It hasn't been verified, but these are all what is out there and being reported by literally everybody in the wrestling world. There's been hours of shows on this at this point. YouTube is a phenomenal way to get caught up with the craziness of this story. So, hold on, Dave, since this is your first show back, welcome back, of course. What a week to pick, what a story to lean on.
Oh my gosh. Especially since CM Punk's that guy that, time after time has gotten me back into wrestling. I've always been that, CM Punk, Paul Heyman guy. I remember the pipe bomb. I was like, I don't care about wrestling. And then boom, Summer of Punk happened.
You're right back in.
It was brilliant. I was right back in at a time when WWE was very stagnant. And when he came back to Fox to do that show, I was like, all right. And I actually watched that show, which I was probably the only person that watched it.
I watched it too, to be fair. I watched it too.
So I did enjoy him there. And when he came back to AEW, I watched all of his appearances. I didn't necessarily watch the rest of AEW, but he made me tune in. And so it's tough because people are like, he's selfish, he's arrogant, he thinks he's bigger than the company. For some fans, he really is.
Yeah.
And that makes it really difficult because I want to sit here and can we say the S word or no?
No.
Okay. So I'll just change it to Eminem lyrics. I'd love to stand for CM Punk, but at the same time, there's never an excuse to punch somebody. I mean, this makes what Will Smith did to Chris Rock look mild. So,
well, see, again, if this had been for the business, if this had been like an angle, like Martin was saying, they could have made a serious amount of money. Like, this could have set up feuds for the rest of probably for the next 2 or 3 years, right? Feuded with everybody. But the fact it was real, and I just love the fact that someone in 2020 said, "I'm going to bite someone." I'm like, how does that happen?
I mean, my daughter bit my finger today, but I don't know.
But a grown man allegedly biting Kenny Omega, which I'm like, this is incredible. So I really hope the new AEW game has that feature where you can bite someone backstage.
A bite mechanic?
A bite mechanic? I mean, if that's not in there, get on that, guys. Come on.
And poor old Kenny, who's just managed to bloody sellotape himself back together. He's away for over a year recovering from like a dozen different injuries.
Oh, yeah. Poor Kenny. Like, apparently the books did, from reports, the books went to Punk. Right, so Punk didn't seek them out. So you're like, who's in the wrong here? But here's where this gets interesting. I mean, the whole thing is interesting, but the books went and got the head of legal, right? Who's number 2 in AEW, right, next to Tony. So,
and that's also the head of legal for the Jacksonville Jaguars, which Tony's daddy owns.
Yeah, correct.
Now, pays everybody's checks, because I saw people being like, Tony needs to step up and remind people who pays the checks. Yeah, it's not you, bud.
But here's the interesting part, right? If you're going to do something wrong, you're not going to bring the head of legal, right? Like, you're just not. Like, no, I mean, you're not. Like, you're going to try to cover yourself, right? So that's the disconnect, right? I don't really buy that the Bucks super kicked the door down and went and attacked Punk, right? It seems a hell of a lot more likely that Punk's the aggressor here, but we don't know. You know, we genuinely don't know. And that's kind of...
The tight lips... Sorry, Darren. The tight lips, I'm getting used to audio only without being able to see when you pause. I apologize, listeners, for cutting Darren off. But like you said, with Tony not acknowledging, that was...
Yeah, that was very telling.
Had to be real. That's when it goes, oh, this isn't this work shoot we all think it is, because otherwise... He would say something, but you could even do the whole storyline of bringing in a special master, independent investigator, whatever you want to call it. That could all be storyline, and you just, keep the elephant in the room there, but you don't talk about it. But it was like Chris Benoit style of nope.
It went too far.
Acknowledging.
It went talking. Yeah, it went way too far. And the thing of it is like, it seemed to whatever the truth of this is, and we will know eventually, and we'll let you guys know.
Maybe.
Well, no, look, it will come out eventually. Like, it has to. It's the biggest story.
A drunken shoot, like 10 years from now, but there's going to be NDAs out the wazoo on this one.
Maybe, but we will know through the legal case. The fact that there are lawsuits and courts are involved here, and police are involved in this. I mean, they're talking about Ace Steel. That's his name. Ace Steel probably doing jail time for biting someone and then allegedly throwing a chair at someone. It's like, come on. Like, it's so unfortunate. It really is. But the story continues, right? And Martin, I'm going to bring you in here now in a second, right?
Sure.
So this was going on from Monday into Tuesday into Wednesday, and obviously Wednesday's when Dynamite is. Dynamite then started, and we were all watching it. I stayed up and watched Dynamite as well. Martin, so did you. And, for listeners, that's very late in Irish time, right? We were watching it, and it opened...
Especially when... 2 nights earlier, you'd sat up to watch the bloody pay-per-view.
Yes, exactly. So TK was, he opened the show and he vacated all the titles, right? But what was interesting was, one, they didn't mention it, which they probably should have, right? Because, I mean, if you're going to work the shooty shoot, worky work angle, you probably should have done that.
100%.
Reasons, right? I mean, legally, I don't think you can talk about it. And I think that's where we're going. Oh, it has to be a shoot. Or, you know what I'm saying? Like,
fair, but he should have...
he didn't have to come on and go, I'm vacating the titles because Ace Steel bit Kenny Omega. Like, he could have come on and said, we've had there's an investigation happening into a backstage incident, and until that happens, I want to move the company forward. We're going to vacate the title.
Yeah, like, I think that would have been better.
I don't understand why he didn't, because everybody knows.
Yeah, like, I mean, the thing about it is, it's their entire core audience lives on the internet, legitimately.
Yeah,
that's the company that they go for. Like, Smarks, it's not like this was a very WWE move. Like, it really was. It was a bizarre, like, Vince McMahon move, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, either you're.
Well, I mean, he needs a job now.
Yeah, that's fair. But okay, it continues. So they actually edited out the Bucks and Punk and Omega from AEW's opener, which is very weird. Which suggests, so on Tuesday into Wednesday, it was announced that Omega, the Bucks, Christopher Danielson, who apparently just tried to break them up, which is kind of so, because I mean he didn't do anything, and a few others have been suspended because this was a full-on melee apparently, right? So they're suspended, and we don't know how long they're suspended for. We just know they're not released, right? So they were suspended. I think it'll be until this investigation is wrapped up. Punk and Ace Steel, however, not a word, which leads to believe, and this story from What Culture, in another update in the ever-developing situation between CM Punk and AEW, the current lay of the land is that the Second City's Saints time with the company is coming to an end. Speaking to PW Torch audio show, Wade Keller indicated that it is presently more likely for Punk to exit AEW than to remain with Tony Khan's promotion. Now, okay, so here's the full list. Omega, Young Bucks, Christopher Daniels, Pat Buck, Michael Nakazawa, and Brandon Cookler. Yeah, man. So, like, that's what I would see too.
You have to ask how effective Brandon Cutler would be in a fight to the point where he had to be suspended.
Well, what's funny is we know Punk's terrible in a fight. You know, I mean, if you watch his MMA career, it's terrible. So I'm like,
oh, your man toyed with him. Didn't actually, but you know what's your man funny? Get in trouble for
messing with him, yeah,
knocking him out when he had the chance.
You know what's funny though? Like last week, Martin, we were talking about, we shouldn't compare like for like. We can't buy Punk, and it's like, yeah, you had to have someone to allegedly bite to save him. It's like I'd imagine like a Pokemon battle. It was like, hey, Steel, I choose you. Use bite.
Apparently one of the
very effective against the Dragon Ball Z character.
Apparently one of the things that came out was that Ace Steel's wife was in the room,
and
she has a broken leg.
She doesn't. She couldn't move.
This melee was sort of moving towards her, and she couldn't move, and that's why he decided to bite.
It's such a bizarre thing to do. I mean, like, look, when Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels had their melee and there was hair pulling, I'm like, lads, hair pulling, really? That's what you're doing? But this one ups it. It had alleged hair pulling and biting. And I'm like, what is this? You guys get paid to pretend to fight, and you can't actually do it. It's mad. Wrestling is the best, guys. It really is.
So it's interesting that you bring up Brett and Shawn, because like obviously this is a company where, like, Punk in particular, where a lot of the guys really idolize Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
And those are two guys who had real, genuine, serious
nuclear heat.
Yeah, who still went out and worked every week because they knew there was big money to be made. So I genuinely, I don't think Punk's leaving. I think, given his, he seems to have a bit of a short fuse and an ego on that, I think he'll be gone longer, and this injury will be used as the excuse, and they'll give it time for everything to settle down and people to calm down. But I think, like, the end of the day, wrestling business all comes down to dollars, and I think they'll all know that there's ridiculous money being left on the table if they don't come back. But
it takes two people to do that, and Punk has walked away from more money before. The thing about it is, it's like, you're looking at it here, right? So the story again develops more, right? So
it's still before the story goes on though. I mean, this was $1 million house.
Yeah,
I mean that's huge for AEW, and that was because of Punk.
Yeah.
So it is a weird situation where he brings in money to the company, but I don't know, man.
So I guess he's also only a year into whatever. I don't know if the details of it were ever made public, but he's only a year into whatever outrageous contract he signed that got him back into wrestling.
The situation backstage, though, is nuclear, as in they do not want Punk there. And from what I heard, it's either that they fire the Elite and the Elite go to WWE, which they totally will, or Punk. And I mean, I heard tales that there were remediation and stuff, but they've passed that. Like, look how much he cannot stand Colt Cabana, to the point that he doesn't even want to talk about him. how are you going to work? Like him and Hangman would have drawn a huge gate, particularly if they had to work this into a real thing. Him and Kenny Omega would have been amazing, you know. But here it continues on, right? So as you said, Punk is injured, like legitimately. So you have to work that in as well. And people said, oh, maybe it happened during the fight. No, apparently it happened during the suicide dive, during the main event, and he tore his tricep, which is what Cody Rhodes is actually out with now at the moment. So his tricep's completely off the bone, apparently. So I mean, Punk just got off an injury. He's injured again. It's going to be at least 9 months to recover from that, because you don't rush that back, you know.
How old is he? 46, 47?
Mid 40s.
Yeah.
But here's the part where I'm like, okay, I don't really think you can walk this back. So it looks like from the evidence, and again, this comes from WhatCulture.com, also in The Observer. And I actually heard Dave Meltzer talk about this beforehand, because he's like, we were told to go to the scrum because they didn't want to go initially. And it seems like they went to the scrum with some knowledge that something was going to happen. Didn't know this was going to happen, obviously. But it looks like Punk planned this. And he's been planning this for a while. So if you watch the show, you know, he's been taking snipes at, and we've covered this on the show, he's taken snipes at the Elite and Hangman throughout the past couple of weeks. And this whole thing now is planned. Now, my question to you guys, do you think it was planned to this extent? Do you think Tony knew what was going on? And if it was, why didn't they tell the Elite to calm down beforehand? Like, you think if you're going to do this, and you're actually going to do a worky work shooty shoot, you know, you're going to tell everybody. You're like, hey, look, he's going to say some pretty bad stuff. Don't bite anybody. You know? What do you guys think? Because, I mean, that's what I would do. I mean, if we were going to do a shoot angle, right, you'd let people know what's going on so this doesn't happen.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I never want to see AEW go the way of, you know, WWE's scripted promos and all that kind of thing. But you would think that you would have a conversation beforehand, like without even going through, you know, detail. I'm going to say X, Y, and Z. You would have a conversation with the person beforehand saying, look, I'm going to say this, this, and this. Just, you know, at all times, remember that we are playing characters.
Yeah. And it's funny because this whole situation apparently started because Hangman said something that upset Punk to the point that he held on a grudge for 6 months. Which, I mean,
while he was out injured.
It's crazy. It's like Punk needs to be told that wrestling isn't real. Someone needs to say it to him. It's like, man, it's not real. You got to calm down, you know?
He fought in UFC. He still thinks it's real.
Yeah, I mean, but here's the, you know, I mean, Martin, you're right. You know, it sucks. It's one of those things where you're like, they're leaving serious money on the table here. You know, Punk has nowhere to go. You know, he can't go back to WWE. He can't go back to AEW. If there's Ring of Honor is bought by AEW, where's he gonna go? You know,
he's gonna go home to AJ Lee. That's amazing.
That's a fair point too. I mean, I don't even know why he's doing all this. It's like he just chill at home.
But yeah, one thing that was like glaring from the press conference, and I haven't seen anybody talking about it yet, and I think this needs to be addressed. Tony Khan needs a haircut. Like what's even going on there?
I don't know. I was
like,
just,
you wonder why he's not being taken seriously by the supposed executive vice presidents, whatever that means. But good Lord, but I wouldn't take him serious if my boss looked like that either. I don't know. It was just everybody.
I don't feel qualified to speak on anyone else's haircut.
Fair. I look, the media scrum thing, it's a great idea, right? But either it's sanitized and toothless, or this happens. And I mean, giving Punk a live microphone is a bad idea. Genuinely, it really is. You know.
And Punk has done kind of shooty media scrums before back when he was in WWE.
But here's the thing,
where he would show up and like act like, or he showed up at Comic-Con when he technically wasn't with WWE with a title and stuff like that. Like, he's good at that, which is why it makes sense. But then when you have people like Brian Alvarez who were there, and it's like, but I wasn't there for the scrum. I know nothing about it. Don't quote me on anything. I saw absolutely nothing. That's when it's like, yeah, you don't want to call it to testify or something. Like, this is weird. It's
so weird.
This is the best blending of kayfabe and reality that I've ever seen. By the way, name of one of my old columns, Kayfabe Reality.
That's true.
But plug aside. Either it's the best blend of that I've ever seen in the history of this sport, or there's some sunny days going on.
Listen, if this is a work, right? One, I think the judge is going to be very upset. And two, like, imagine if it is a work and they're in court and they're like, here, look, that wasn't real, right? Like, it was what? I think they all go to jail then, because wasting, that's a felony to do that, right? So I don't think...
I just want them to be in court and the judge to go, where's the defendant? Phil Brooks hasn't shown up yet. And then the next thing you hear, diddling out, when he comes bursting through the doors and walks down through the court.
Here's what they do, right? AEW were like, we're going live to the courtroom, and then it's all serious, and the judge turning around and it's Vince McMahon.
It's Colt Cabana.
No, he's one of the barristers.
Yes. Didn't Hornswoggle have like a court thing?
They did.
Years ago.
Yeah, the little person's court, I believe.
It's the little person's court.
Yeah, that's what they called it, folks. That's what they called it. That was the name.
That's the correct term. I'm so subscribed to the Little People of America newsletter. Comes once a month. You ever wonder where their convention is? You can find me at @TheDaveStevens on Twitter. Fair.
That's, it doesn't. Yeah, Dave, I missed you on the show, man. I did.
It's true. You can look at my emails. I'm dead serious.
But look, here's the thing. So we're going to move away from this because this is, again, still developing. And it's one of the things that we can't really put a pin in it. But, Martin, it's weird, right? In the space of a month, we've had the two biggest stories in wrestling in years, probably.
Oh, it's
just
insane.
The Vince McMahon thing, which we didn't think would happen, and then AEW basically imploding from the inside. There's also a conspiracy theory that Punk is working for the WWE, and he's actually destroying AEW from the inside, which I don't know. I mean, maybe.
Well, this is one of the reasons I just got off Twitter altogether. It's just a minefield of absolute nonsense. Like,
absolutely.
Do you think that will go down with that Vince Russo was sent to WCW by Vince McMahon? Like, is that the level that we're on?
Yeah,
like,
I think
Punk was sent to AEW by Triple H, who they're clearly besties.
Oh, they love each other, really. But it's funny because all the promo work that they did a couple of years ago, Triple H looks like he was saying exactly what's going on, where he's like, and you're watching the promos, you're like, whoa, he was like spot on. So Triple H, ultimate good guy, really? Question mark? I think so. Just saying. But look, we're going to move away from this because, we could